everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Glossy Philosophy. My name is Jansen Bidman, and today you are tuned in for a book talk. Today we are talking about The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. It is book 1 of 3 of The Sinking Empire. Now, Andrea Stewart, before she wrote this book, she wrote for many kind of sci-fi fantasy magazines and published short stories. This is her first novel, and it is a doozy. It's really, really good. So yes, I would highly recommend it if you are into magic and things along that line. Andrea Stewart is a daughter of immigrants. She currently lives in California, and she says that even though she couldn't become a dragon slayer, she decided to write. So her love of sci-fi and fantasy is hardcore. So let's talk about a quick synopsis of this book. Now, this is another one that's really hard to kind of give you a quick synopsis without doing any spoiler alerts, but we are going to do our best. Andrea Stewart has dropped us in the middle of a tipping point during the Phoenix Empire, during the Sukai dynasty. So what is happening in this island civilization is there's an Emperor Sukai who is holding everything together through fear and through bone shard magic. He has a daughter, Lynn, who is his heir apparent. However, he constantly is testing her and pushing her and saying, you might actually not be the heir. So Lynn spends the entire book trying to prove herself and also get her father's love. We have another character, Jovis, who was a navigator. He was a ship's pilot turned smuggler after his wife vanished 8 years ago, and he has been trying to find her for the last 8 years. He brings us a very unique perspective on what's happening in the empire and how people feel about the emperor himself. And then we have 2 women who are dealing with the big question of the haves and the have-nots, and how the emperor's rule is really making it difficult for the have-nots to succeed in this empire. And then we have our last character, whose name is Sand, and we don't really get to know her so much until the end of the book, but it turns out that she has been basically magically created. And because she doesn't have any memories, she's very frustrated. She doesn't understand her place in the world. She doesn't understand why she was put where she was. And she has a lot of rage and anger that we will see in book 2 next year. So this is called The Sinking Empire. There are 3 books. This is the first one. And the empire is sinking metaphorically because we have this rebellion that is started by the Shardless Few who want to take down the emperor and start something a little bit more democratic. And then we actually have sinking islands. We have Jovis, the smuggler, who sees and kind of takes part in an island that is sinking, and how he deals with that and how the emperor deals with that. So we have lots of different facets, lots of different sides going on to how the Sukai dynasty is actually going and how this empire is sinking. So now that we know a little bit about this book, let me tell you why you should read it. I have been reading fantasy and sci-fi books for a very long time, since elementary school, and I feel like a lot of the modern fantasy sci-fi books just kind of follow your traditional trajectory, and even when a character has a secret, you kind of can guess what it's going to be. In Bone Shard Daughter, there are so many twists and turns and unexpected, shocking moments. I was on the edge of my seat throughout most of the book, from the initial idea of the tithing festival where children who are 8 need to go and get a bone chipped away from their skull so that the emperor can perform magic that nobody understands except for him. They only understand that they are being protected from possibly a worse off fate, but life isn't great, so people are really upset. That idea in and of itself is shocking. And of course, some of the children do not make it, which is incredibly upsetting for the characters themselves and you as the reader. We meet people who have children who haven't met it or have brothers and sisters. We also find out that this bone shard magic sucks the life out of the people that their bones are being used, and they have a half-life, they have less of a life. So people are very, very upset. And that idea, again, is just, it feels new, it feels fresh, it just feels interesting and something that I wasn't expecting when I picked up this book. The constructs are terrifying when you read about them, especially the three constructs that the emperor uses to basically do his bidding and rule over his kingdom while he's dealing with things inside the palace. The secrets that come out in this book are shocking. Yes, there is some violence that happens in this book, and you can choose to skip over it. It absolutely showcases how the emperor has almost become insane with power and his need to control. It is beyond what it should be. Another thing that I really like that Andrea Stewart did was she brought us as many sides to what's actually happening in the empire as possible. We have Lynn's perspective, who is actually in the palace with her father, trying to figure out how to get his love and how to get the magic so that she can step up and become emperor and become a better emperor. We can tell from the very beginning that she is going to rule in a different way than her father, but she's trying to figure out, she's a young woman, she's trying to figure out how to basically like get him to step down and give it to her, but she has to prove herself to him first, or she thinks she does. We have Jovis the smuggler, who of course is very comical. He is the comic relief. He also feels things very deeply. He's a really interesting character. He goes through a little bit of a change from beginning to end, and you can see him as like almost a little boy mentality in the beginning and growing up into a young man by the end, and really starting to think for himself and push back from other people who are trying to take from him. He's already had his wife taken and he just wants to bring her back home. And we have this couple who is dealing with the fact that one of them has a lot of opportunities, has a lot of wealth, and the other one has basically nothing, and she's really pulled herself up from the bootstraps. She's interested in the rebellion. This one is not, but because of their relationship and because of their love, it brings them together and they're able to communicate in a very realistic way that feels very genuine, and I like their conversations that they have about how to deal with the empire and how to deal with the rebellion within their own island as well. San's character is really interesting. Even though she's a very secondary character, she becomes more important in 2 and 3. And the anger that she feels in book 1 feels very justified, but at the end of the book you just ask the question, what's next for you? So I love that Andrea Stewart thought through this series, even in book 1, to really have those questions from the reader. Certain things get settled by the end of the book, but a lot is unsettled. And it's not so unsettling that you're just like, oh, uneasy. It's more just like, how are you going to solve these problems? These are actual big problems of how to rule an empire and how to go from an emperor and the subjects into more of a democratic version of that is really interesting to see all these characters' growth throughout the 3 books, but definitely throughout book 1. You like a lot of the characters, and there are definitely characters that you don't like, but again, I think it's really smart of Andrea Stewart to bring so many different perspectives. Otherwise, I don't know if it would have worked as well if we would have had just Lynn's perspective, because she's so isolated in the palace being the emperor's daughter, versus having so many others on the outside being able to tell us as the reader what's actually happening. So we're kind of discovering this with Lynn as well. Lynn is an amazing character. She is such a great role model for when you feel like you can't get something, you can't understand something. You can, because she just keeps going and she just keeps pushing, and finally she does succeed. I really like her transformation from the beginning to the end of the book, but I also really like that at the end, again, I'm thinking, what is next? How are you going to solve this problem now? So lots of questions at the end of book 1, but it is so, so good. As always, with an adventure-packed book, you need to make sure that you leave yourself enough time with the last 150 pages to finish it, because so much happens that you will not want to put it down. And that is the book talk. Thank you guys so much for watching this book talk on The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. We will be covering books 2 and 3 over the next few years, and I would love to know, if you've read this book, what you thought of it, what you think of the entire series, and just kind of get a conversation going about book talks in general. Normally I do fashion videos every Wednesday, beauty videos every Friday. On Friday, I'm doing a look that is inspired by The Bone Shard Daughter, so make sure you tune in for that. Give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.